We're on trail number 4 at Charlestown State Park, just across the bridge, across the Ohio River in southern Indiana from Louisville. Been to Charlestown State Park a few times, hiked here each one of those times. It's the park where you can hike down to Rose Island, which used to be an amusement park of sorts way back in the day. But I've never been on this trail number 4. So looking forward to checking it out. Beautiful day for a nice little hike in the woods here. It's currently 4:30 on a late Saturday afternoon. 66 degrees, first week of September. We have 4B, 4C. Guess this is where the loop goes. Which way should we go, y'all? That way? It goes downhill, it looks like. This has a slight uphill. I hear voices to the left. We'll go straight. It's a perfect afternoon for college football. But Louisville played last night on what was a great evening for college football. Game number 2 on Louisville's schedule. Kept them at home, L&N Stadium. Just under 50,000 people there to see the Cardinals host James Madison. And as we all know by now, one of the better group of 5 programs in the country. Louisville closes a 15.5 point spread. I had the Cardinals winning by 10. They had to come back to do it, but they won by 14, 28-14. There's quite a bit to take away from that game. A lot more than the week 1 blowout win over Eastern Kentucky. So what do you say? We hike about it. So let's talk about the offense. Let's talk about the defense. Let's talk about the special teams. Like the previous video of week 1, we'll dish out a grade to both offense, defense, as well as special teams. The trio will all get their own individual grade. So the Cardinals now 2-0. And as expected, we learned a lot more about Louisville in week 2 than we did week 1. Week 1, nice tune-up, basically a scrimmage that counts, so to speak. Week 2 against a team that came in expecting to beat Louisville. In fact, post-game, they said as much. Even more so, going to the point where it's like, to summarize, Louisville didn't win the game. James Madison lost it. There you go. One thing was clear, Louisville won that game. Louisville was the better team, but the Cardinals had to fight for it. They were kind of set in their ways. And when I say they, that's basically Jeff Brown, the head coach, in the offensive play calling. And he kind of alluded to that after the game, saying that's on me. Should have come up with something to counteract that. But even doing so, eventually you just had to figure that a big play was going to pop. We saw that with Chris Bell taking basically a quick slant 4 yards and taking off 60 yards after catch, and the 64-yard touchdown on, then we know Isaac Brown did an Isaac Brown thing and went from basically struggling to just get over 20 yards, averaging just barely over a yard per carry. He changes all that with one run, breaks through, 78-yard touchdown, gives him over 100 yards, 8-point-something yards per carry for the game. So Louisville clearly the better team. Defensively, unbelievable performance. So let's get to it. Let's talk offense. it was an offense that certainly wasn't going downhill very well all day against James Madison. James Madison plan defensively, not something that they really put on display in their opener. And they've got a new defensive coordinator as well, but they brought the house all day long. Blitz, blitz, and they didn't have to call it like we did on the playground. Blitz, blitz, another blitz. I think they might still be blitzing, as salty as they were after the game. Miller Moss was on the move constantly. Louisville's turnover was because of a sack that came around basically untouched. Miller Moss didn't have the pocket awareness at that moment and had no idea he was coming. Fumble, turnover. The run game, stuffed. Who had that? If you had Louisville's running game getting stuffed against James Madison, you were almost right. But Isaac Brown changed that with one run. But outside of that one run, yeah, Louisville's running game was stuffed. It did not create any positive momentum at any point until the 78-yard touchdown run. And again, Jeff Brom said in his postgame, that's on me. Should have come up with something to negate that, to take advantage of that. Hello, open week. Put something on a post-it, stick it on the wall, come up with something to counteract that, because it's coming. James Madison found a way to almost stop Isaac Brown in the Louisville running game. And if you do that, you could be in pretty good shape if you make Louisville's offense one-dimensional. And that's not a knock on Louisville's passing game. Miller Moss had a tough game. You know, when you're on the move like that, it's going to be difficult. Receivers, Chris Bell had almost a catch in the end zone. Later did get to the end zone. But there wasn't much action from the wide receivers. One of the things that I said after game one, is I wanted to see more from the third wide receiver. Didn't really see much from that spot, except at a moment that counted, and that moment got on SportsCenter, I think it was number 5 on their top 10. Dakari Collins with the one-handed grab on the 2-point conversion. Nice catch. Worthy of such a ranking with SportsCenter's top 10. But in the offensive line, I mean, under just constant, aggressive, attacking pressure, had some consistent struggles. So certainly a to-do item for Jeff Brom and his offensive staff to figure out some answers for that, because expect to see it from even more talented defensive players once you step into ACC play. So the Louisville offense, which myself included, the bulk of the college football onlookers, especially Card Nation, anticipate a Louisville offense this year that's going to score points frequently, kind of like what Louisville did in its opener against a much lesser opponent in Eastern Kentucky. Maybe not the same pace, but very similar. 30 points plus per game. Against James Madison, just 264 yards total offense, and the bulk of that, 64 and 70, yeah, about half of that is off of 2 plays. So that's far from the expectations of 400 plus yards of offense per game, 30 plus points. Yeah, they almost got to 28, but 7 of those points, or 6 of those points, was because of a fantastic defensive effort that we'll get to in just a moment. So on the strength of those 2 performances, 2 plays, and they're coming from your stars. That's your 2 preseason All-ACC selections, Chris Bell and Isaac Brown. But with the struggles with almost every other offensive play throughout the game, best I can do is we're going to do a C+ for the offense in the 28-14 win over James Madison. Let's talk some defense. Again, as we heard following the scrimmages, as we discussed, in the video following the EKU victory, the front seven for Louisville is pretty impressive. And it continued to be that way following James Madison. Cardinals defense allowed just 263 yards. A big chunk of that coming on the final drive with that reached the 1 yard line before the clock expired, as well as the opening drive of the second half. Prior to the game, I mentioned that for Louisville to entertain the thought of covering that 15.5 point spread, they would likely need a defensive score. They got that defensive score. Clev Lubin, the transfer from Coastal Carolina, ranked amongst the top 20 last year with 9.5 sacks. Just continues to impress. Coming off the edge, has another 1.5 sacks. So now 3.5 sacks on the season for Clev Lubin, including a big moment getting to the quarterback in the end zone for a sack, forcing a fumble in the process, which was recovered by AJ Green to give the Cardinals that defensive score. Still didn't cover the spread, but because of that defensive score, they were able to entertain the potential of covering that spread. Wesley Bailey continues to impress. The whole defensive line, the depth chart, all of them. Impressive performances coming from each one of them. TJ Quinn leading the team with 11 tackles. Dude just gets to the ball. Great leader for the Louisville defense this year. Secondary, again, kind of similar to the first game. Louisville's defense was getting so much pressure, and James Madison, not really a throwing team per se. Didn't get really overly tested. Almost got totally embarrassed on the game's first play with a trick play. Had a guy wide open, but just missed the throw, or that'd have been an easy touchdown to start the game. Could have changed everything, but it did not. So really, still, after 2 games, kind of hard to fully judge how the secondary's looking. So nothing but great feedback for the defense. Sure, we would love a shutout every time, but it's not going to happen most of the time. Shutouts are hard to pitch. But they did a fantastic job, again, putting the offense in positions to go out and win the game, including contributing a defensive score, which for the second straight week, the defense, you're getting an A, considered an A+, but that touchdown to start the second half, that was a dangerous moment, one that Louisville was certainly able to respond to, outscoring James Madison 22-0 from that point. But you got to play tougher out of the gate in that kind of situation where your team needs a spark, needs momentum. So instead of an A+, I don't think you'll complain with an A. So the offense C+, defense A. Let's get to special teams, shall we? So special teams, got a couple field goals out of Cooper Rambier, which was fantastic. Missed another point after attempt. This one appeared to me as if it was the hold, not being able to grab it. Second straight week Louisville has failed on an extra point attempt. But on that note, Louisville did convert a pair of 2-point conversions. The 2 field goals were the only scoring Louisville had in the first half. And then after they got the big Chris Bell score, went for 2, ended up being a Miller Moss keeping, and then he gets to the end zone for the conversion. And in doing so, he became the first quarterback since 2004, which was Stephon LaFour's, for a quarterback rush in to convert a 2-point conversion. So Miller Moss got the first one, and then he hit Dakari Collins, which I mentioned earlier, the great one-handed grab for the second 2-point conversion. So you have to include that on your special teams grade. Nothing really spectacular in the return game. Good job by James Madison to not let Colin Lacey be too impactful in the punt game. But overall, it's an improvement. There weren't the crazy number of penalties that we saw in the first game on special teams. You did have the missed PAT, but you got the 2 field goals and the 2 PATs. So special teams, you're going to get a B+ this week for the 28-14 effort in helping Louisville now be 2-0 on the young season. I don't think we'll learn much against Bowling Green. We'll learn some, but not too much, I don't think. Their first significant, big, almost must-win test is, as if every game isn't really a must-win, but is September 27th when Louisville is on the road for the first time, opening ACC play at Pitt. But obviously up first is Bowling Green on the 20th. Before that, the open week. I will miss hanging out at L&N Stadium with so many of you this coming weekend, but let's meet back there on the 20th, okay? When the Falcons come in, we'll make that kind of a, how about we enjoy a kind of a, I don't want to say celebratory, but almost festive type of atmosphere. Let's deal up. Let's dish up a beautiful autumn day. Leaves are starting to change. Temperatures are still comfortably like they are currently. And it's a game where Card March is packed as the team comes roaring through. And there's just that vibe there. You can sense it in tailgating. You know what I'm talking about. And the offense comes out, scores quick. Defense comes out, does their thing. Offense comes out, scores quick. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Let's have one of those days. Fireworks are just... Should we hand out some helmet stickers? Should we congratulate 3 players for their performance in the win over James Madison? Let's do that. First, the first helmet sticker is going to defensive end Clev Lubin. Ends up with 1.5 sacks. I believe had 6 tackles to be near the top of the team lead in tackles. Once again, for a second straight game. Now 3.5 sacks on the season. Forced a fumble that was recovered in the end zone for a touchdown by A.J. Green. Dude is off to an absolutely hot start. He gets a helmet sticker. Without his... And he just basically cast aside 2 would-be offensive linemen trying to slow him down. One ends up on the ground, basically looking at Clev Lubin's feet, the bottom of his cleats, as he rushes into the end zone to grab the James Madison quarterback. Dude gets a helmet sticker. The second helmet sticker, Isaac Brown. In check for the whole game, but you just had a feeling, and the players talked about it afterwards, you had just had a feeling. It's kind of hard to keep someone with his ability and speed in check for 4 quarters. You just needed a seam, and against a heavy blitzing defense, the best odds were to get outside. And credit to JMU, you know, he tried to get out there multiple times, and they were there anticipating it and made some great stops, but not when Louisville really needed it. And he gets through and for his big score. So another 100-yard game for Mr. Isaac Brown, who loves to score off of big runs. Big play, Isaac Brown. He gets a helmet sticker. One more helmet sticker to hand out. Well, I'm going to hand one that somebody's going to have to put it on their office door, unless he secretly wears a helmet around the football complex. This defensive coordinator, co-defensive coordinator, and secondary coach, Ron English, rightfully took a lot of hits from the fan base last year with a roller coaster defense and some plays that just left you scratching your head like, how do you let somebody get so wide open? But through 2 games in the 2025 season, Granted, it was Eastern Kentucky. And a James Madison team that you knew they were going to run the ball nearly the bulk of the time. We'll just describe it as that. But they've done their job. And I'll even add, they've exceeded at the expectation through 2 games. So the third helmet sticker, we're going to give it to Ron English. Helmet stickers, Clev Lubin, Isaac Brown, and Ron English. That's a good sized hill. Getting ready to go up it. Now that we got the helmet stickers out of the way though, got some concerns. First concern. Is my number one concern the same as your number one concern? Yes, I agree. The offensive line. They were under constant attack. Blitzed by more than they could have blockers for a minute at a time. Under constant duress. And because of that, Miller Moss was having struggles being able to hang around the pocket for longer than a second. It was just kind of like the offense was there just to kind of slow down that blitz. Again, you had multiple guys coming free because there was nobody available, but there were some mistakes and miscues and things that assisted in that effort as well. And again, those things are going to happen when you're facing such an aggressive defensive front, non-stop, in-your-face aggressive defensive front. Kudos, though, an area of improvement. A lot fewer penalties up front, especially as the game progressed. The 5 penalties stayed on 5 penalties. I'm not saying all those were on the offensive front, because they weren't, but certainly cleaned up their game in that aspect from Eastern Kentucky to an increase in opponent in James Madison. So there's some promise there. And I still think I don't want to hammer them too hard because of the struggles they had against a very aggressive James Madison defense. But it is a concern, and it was a slight concern after week 1, and now I think that the concern level has been elevated a little bit. Making some progress on this hill. And I expect that the offense is going to make some progress with itself during the off week. Second concern continues to be similar to what I saw in week 1. Continues now after 2 games is somebody in that wide receiver number 3 spot. Please stand up. Jakari Collins made a fantastic catch, one-handed grab in the end zone for the 2-point conversion that put him in ESPN's number 5 in ESPN's top 10 Sports Center highlights. So maybe that's an indicator that number 3 is on its way. But need to see that develop, especially as competition continues to increase. You got another game in Bowling Green to kind of help figure that out, but it needs to be figured out and see more contribution from that number 3 spot. So the number 3 wide receiver continues to be a concern of mine as well. Hey, we've almost made it to the top, at least from what I can see. Third concern isn't necessarily something Louisville has done. It's what the schedule is, and that's the level of competition that they have faced through 2 games. Defenses look fantastic. Is it partially because of the level of competition? The offense looked great in game 1, not so much in game 2. How will they fare against any increase in competition? So still some unknowns, and it's going to stay that way until Louisville goes to Pittsburgh on September 27th. So, 3 concerns: offensive line, wide receiver number 3 spot, and looking forward to seeing Louisville play some stiffer competition so we can really know what this Louisville team's got against some of the better teams in the ACC. Hey, real quick thank you to those of you who have subscribed in recent weeks. The channel has been kind of growing pretty quickly, and I appreciate that. Many of you share the press conferences that I post, the Let's Hikes that we go on and things like that. And again, I appreciate that. Feel free to go ahead and give this video a like. That helps as well. And for those of you who haven't subscribed, consider doing so. You can hit that button down below. And again, if you do so, thank you. If you don't, thank you for watching. Hope you come back and check out another one. So it's a 2-0 start for Jeff Brom and these Cardinals. Not the most entertaining, as I said, but it's a 2-0 start. And it's always more enjoyable to get out and hike following a win than it is a loss. So let's keep that trend going as well. But for now, appreciate you going hiking with Michael McCammon.